Let me tell you something right now. Going no contact with a narcissist is one of the hardest and bravest decisions you'll ever make. And if you're here reading this, it means you've either already done it or you're seriously considering it. But here's the reality. Just because you're done with them doesn't mean they're finished with you. In fact, the moment you go silent, that's often when their real game starts. Because narcissists don't simply walk away. Oh no. They plan, they calculate, and they wait. They're not staying quiet because they respect your boundary. They're not avoiding you because they've truly moved on. They're silent because they're carefully thinking about their next move. And today, I'm pulling back that curtain. I'm going to show you the 7 hidden things a narcissist secretly wants from you when you cut them off. Not the obvious drama. I'm talking about what's happening behind the scenes, what they're hoping you'll do, what they're waiting to see, and why your silence isn't rest for them. It's strategy. So, if you've ever questioned your choice, if you've ever wondered why you still feel like they're pulling at your emotions, stay with me because by the time you finish this, you'll see their game plan more clearly. And even better, you'll understand exactly how to stop playing by their rules. When you go no contact with a narcissist, it creates a reaction. It might not be a loud argument or a direct confrontation. Sometimes it's something subtle, a post, a like, a story view, a short message, anything that shows them they still affect you. Because when you go silent, their mind doesn't see that as the end. It sees it as a challenge, a test of power. And trust me, they are paying attention. They watch more than you think, even when it appears they've forgotten about you. Why? Because your silence isn't just silence to them. It's a threat to the control they once had. Narcissists survive on attention. It doesn't matter whether it's love, admiration, frustration, or anger. It's all supplied to them. When you cut contact, it's like shutting off their oxygen. That silence, that peace. It's empowering for you, but deeply uncomfortable for them. It confuses them, frustrates them, and forces them to question their influence. They can't stand not knowing how you feel. And what bothers them even more is the possibility that you might actually be doing well without them. So what do? They test the waters. At first, it's small. They may view your story, but never say a word. They might post something vague that seems directed at you. They may ask a mutual friend about you or leave a comment connected to a memory you shared. Every bit of it is bait. They want a reaction. Any reaction confirms that you're still emotionally involved even if you believe you've moved on. And this is where things become dangerous. Narcissists know your patterns. They know what gets under your skin. If they can't make you speak, they'll settle for making you feel. If they can't pull you back into their world physically, they'll try to live inside your thoughts emotionally. They want you replaying the last fight. They want you checking their social media, wondering if they're happy. They want you upset, angry, confused, or heartbroken because every emotional reaction, even one you never reveal, gives them a sense of power. They don't necessarily need you to text them. They just need to know that you still care. That's their victory. Because if you still care deeply enough to stay emotionally trapped, they believe they still control part of the game. The moment you react even slightly, a comment, a post that sounds emotional, a quote aimed in their direction, they see it as proof that the door remains unlocked. And if the door remains open, they believe they can walk back in whenever they choose. Now, let's talk about the mind games they often play during no contact. And sometimes they'll disappear completely on purpose, hoping you'll begin asking questions. Why aren't they reaching out? Did they forget me that quickly? Did they ever care at all? That silence is often intentional. It's not peace, it's provocation. They're using absence as a tool to make you doubt yourself. They want your confusion to become so uncomfortable that you break no contact. The second you reach out, the second you send a message, they feel they've regained control. They don't just want a reaction. Many of them expect one. They rely on it, deep down. They often believe you won't last. They assume you'll miss them, question yourself, and eventually give in. And if they can't reach you directly, they'll often try indirect routes. They'll post subtle messages, spread half-truths, or suddenly start showing off a new relationship. It's not necessarily because they've moved on. Often it's because they want to keep your attention. They want to make sure you still feel something, because feelings become attention, and attention becomes influence. Every move they make during no contact can be calculated. It's not always progress, it's often manipulation. They're not moving forward. They're attempting to pull you backward. They want to restart the same painful cycle. They want to make sure that even while you're silent, they still occupy space inside your mind. Yet every day you remain quiet. Every day you protect your boundary. You reclaim a little more of your strength. When a narcissist loses access to you, they don't suddenly become self-aware. They don't suddenly develop genuine accountability. What they often do instead is twist your silence into guilt. They want to turn it into a mirror that makes you question yourself. They crave your guilt, your self-doubt, your emotional confusion. They know guilt is one of the strongest chains that can keep a person attached. And if they can't reach you physically, they'll work hard to stay inside your mind. For them, your silence isn't merely rejection. It's humiliation. It's an injury to their ego. But instead of facing that reality, they rewrite the story. Suddenly, you're the one who's cold. You're the one who walked away without trying. You become the villain in the narrative they've created. This reversal is powerful because it makes you question your own reality. You begin replaying conversations and arguments wondering where things went wrong. They want that. They want you trapped in that emotional cycle, so consumed by confusion that you start forgetting why you went no contact in the first place. They want you remembering the good moments, the charm, the laughter, the affection. They want those memories to overshadow the manipulation, the disrespect, and the emotional pain. They want you thinking, maybe I overreacted, maybe they weren't that bad, maybe I left too soon. That doubt becomes their hidden doorway. If they can plant even a single seed of shame inside your mind, they know it may eventually grow into a feeling of obligation, a text, an explanation, another chance, something that reopens access. Narcissists are often skilled at using your empathy against you. That's one reason they were drawn to you in the first place. Your compassion, your loyalty, your emotional depth, qualities they benefit from. And when they can't guilt you into returning, they'll often try to guilt you for leaving. They may act broken, abandoned, or misunderstood. They'll present themselves as the victim, not always directly, but through mutual friends, social media posts, or carefully crafted silence designed to pull at your conscience. It's manipulation without direct contact. And it can be effective, especially when you're still healing. Because for a caring person, guilt can feel overwhelming. They understand that. They depend on it. They don't necessarily want your love. They want your emotional energy. They want your internal conflict. They want those late-night moments when you're lying awake, wondering if you were too harsh, too sensitive, or too unforgiving. That is exactly where they want your attention. They hand you their emotional burden and quietly wait to see if you'll carry it for them. They don't want peace. They want confusion. They want to make your strength feel like cruelty. They want your healthy boundary to feel like betrayal. And when guilt grows, it doesn't whisper. It shouts. Narcissists understand how to make that voice echo until it fills your thoughts, even without direct contact. They want control. They want to live in your mind without paying rent. They want your obsession. Not necessarily the kind where you chase them, the kind where you can't stop analyzing what happened. They want you wondering what you could have done differently. They want you thinking about what they're doing now. That's often the real objective. If they can't have your time, your attention, or your presence, they'll settle for your peace of mind because for them, being remembered, being discussed, even being disliked can still feel like power. When you find yourself replaying arguments, imagining future conversations, or wondering what they would say if you spoke again, you're experiencing the lingering effects of that conditioning. They built that cycle intentionally. They trained you to question yourself, to hope for change, to keep fixing problems that were never yours to solve. But every time you resist the urge to reach out, you weaken that cycle a little more. Begin replacing their voice with your own. You stop asking, what if they change? And start asking, what do I need to heal? You stop focusing on whether they understand your pain and start focusing on protecting your peace. And that's where your real strength begins. Because narcissists can only thrive where chaos exists. The more peace you choose, the less space they have to operate. The more you invest in your own healing, the less influence they have over your emotions. The longer you maintain healthy distance, the more their control fades into the background. Your silence isn't weakness, it's recovery. It's the end of an illusion and the beginning of freedom. It's choosing clarity over confusion, stability over emotional turbulence, and self-respect over endless explanations. Analyzing their actions, trying to decode every mixed signal, or constantly checking social media to see if they've posted something new can keep you trapped in the very icicle you're trying to escape. That kind of obsession is still energy, it's still attention, and they love knowing they can hold that much power without saying a single word. To them, it means the bond hasn't truly been broken. It's simply changed form. That's why one of the hidden things they secretly want most during no contact is your continued focus. They want to remain the center of your emotional world even when they're no longer physically present. But the moment you stop monitoring, stop analyzing, stop explaining, and stop carrying responsibility for their feelings, something changes. The grip begins to loosen. The fog begins to lift. And the person who slowly returns isn't the version of you they controlled. It's the version of you they were always afraid of. The one who no longer needs their approval, no longer fears their absence, and no longer mistakes manipulation for love. That is the outcome they never planned for. Because the one thing a narcissist wants most is continued access to your attention, your emotions, and your energy. And the one thing they fear most is your genuine indifference. Not hatred, not revenge, not conflict, freedom. Because once you reach that place, their games stop working. Their silence loses meaning. Their bait goes unnoticed. Their attempts to provoke a reaction fall flat. And for the first time, the power no longer belongs to them. It belongs to you. They don't need to speak when they've already taken up space inside your mind. This is exactly why narcissists often end relationships surrounded by confusion. They rarely offer true closure. They won't take accountability. They won't explain their actions. And they certainly won't fully acknowledge the pain they've caused. Instead, they disappear, they ghost, they discard, or they suddenly become cold without any warning because they understand that confusion is one of the fastest paths to obsession. The human mind dislikes unfinished endings. It searches for resolution. So when someone vanishes or completely changes the story without explanation, your thoughts begin racing to fill in the missing pieces, trying to create meaning out of disorder. And that's exactly what they depend on. The more you think, the more they remain present in your world. Sometimes they'll even leave behind a little false hope before they disappear. Maybe they talked about a future with you. Maybe they apologized just enough to keep you uncertain. Or perhaps they said they only needed some time and space. Those aren't always innocent comments. They're breadcrumbs, psychological hooks, designed to keep you wondering whether they'll come back, whether they meant what they said, or whether you should keep waiting. Every moment spent trapped in that mental cycle becomes a win for them. Even their silence can be intentional. By remaining quiet, they know your mind may do the work on their behalf. You'll wonder why they haven't reached out, whether they ever cared, or whether you somehow did something wrong. That emptiness becomes an echo chamber, keeping you attached to thoughts about them and searching for answers that may never come. They may never send a direct message, but they'll post something suggestive, a vague caption, or a carefully selected photo that seems to show they're happy and thriving without you. None of it is necessarily accidental. It's often designed to keep your emotions spinning in circles. The fixation they create isn't really about love or missing the good times. It's about emotional influence. They want your healing to move slowly. They want your confidence to remain connected to their approval. They want memories of them to interrupt your peace, your sleep, and your progress. Because if they still occupy your thoughts, they still hold importance. And for them, becoming irrelevant is one of the most uncomfortable outcomes imaginable. That's why detaching from a narcissist isn't only about blocking a number or ending communication. It's about reclaiming your mental and emotional space. As long as they occupy your thoughts, they don't have to be physically present to affect your life. They've created a version of themselves in your mind that constantly replays memories, examines details, and questions everything. The hardest part is that you may not even realize you're doing it. You might mistake it for normal healing. But to the narcissist, that ongoing fixation becomes a delayed source of supply. It feeds their ego, even in complete silence. So even when there is no contact, the game can continue not through calls or texts, but through the emotional residue they intentionally left behind. They count on you to carry it, revisit it, and relive it. That's what they want most, to remain unforgettable, even if the memory comes wrapped in pain. When a narcissist is confronted with no contact, they rarely see it as a healthy boundary. Instead, they see it as an interruption in the game, a pause before another round begins. They don't truly believe you're gone forever. Deep down, they often assume you'll come back eventually. Maybe not immediately, but sooner or later. They rely on that belief because they've conditioned you through cycles of love bombing, devaluation, confusion, and chaos. They've trained your emotions to crave their attention, fear losing them, and seek their approval even when it causes harm. So, when you finally walk away, they don't always panic. Instead, they wait. They expect you to break first. They believe their influence lasts indefinitely. They know what makes you feel guilty, what causes you to doubt yourself, and what hopes you're still secretly holding on to. They've crafted a version of themselves that's difficult to completely let go of even after everything you've experienced. Because of that, when you leave, they don't necessarily think it's over. They think you simply need time to cool down, miss them, and reconsider. They convince themselves that you'll eventually reach out. Until then, they stay quiet, confident that you're still emotionally connected to them in some way. Sometimes they'll even use your silence against you. They'll tell others you're being cold, dramatic, or immature. They'll claim you abandoned them without reason. They do this to reshape the narrative and position themselves as the victim. That's the strategy. If they can make it appear that you overreacted, they keep the door open for future manipulation. And if you begin feeling guilty or misunderstood, you may feel tempted to explain yourself. That's exactly what they want. Even when they say nothing, their mindset often remains the same. In their eyes, you're not done. They're simply emotional. They tell themselves they'll come back when they've calmed down. That's one reason many narcissists don't immediately rush towards you when you go silent. It's not always because they've moved on. It's because they're calculating. They're measuring your resolve. They want to know how long it takes before you crack. They want proof that the emotional dependency they created still exists. And if you do reach out even once, they often view it as confirmation. To them, it isn't about love. It's about possession. They believe they still own a piece of your heart. And by contacting them, you've seemingly proven it. They depend on time to work in their favor. They wait for the anger to fade, for the clarity to soften, and for painful memories to become less sharp. They understand how nostalgia works. As time passes, you may forget the constant anxiety, the manipulation, and the exhaustion of walking on eggshells. You may remember only the charm, the connection, and the emotional highs. They count on that. They allow time to do part of the work for them. And if they sense you're moving forward, they'll quietly reappear to stir old emotions. Perhaps they'll send a simple message asking how you've been. Maybe they'll share a song you both loved or reference a memory from the past. These actions are rarely signs of genuine growth or accountability. More often, they're carefully placed bait. They want you wondering whether they've changed, whether they miss you, and whether there's still hope. In reality, they're often just testing the door to see whether it's still unlocked.